Well, hello, and welcome to Death Café with me, your Latinx bruja, Pastel Supernova. This is where I do my part to normalize heart-led conversations about death, dying, and loss. I'll be sharing personal journeys and conversing with some pretty insightful minds on everything to do with the inevitable. This is episode 5, and for this recording, I went live with no plan and no specific partner to speak with. I just wanted to talk about death, dying, and loss, and what I got was a journey that went from unexpected questions into my practice, the conversation of spirituality and God and faith, and back to what makes a good death. It was quite a ride. Enjoy. I want to know how people want to die. How, if you were to picture a good death, like what's the best case scenario for you? What do you see? What do you want? I legit want to know what you consider a good death. I'm shuffling some tarot cards to see what's up, what aspect of death I might want to talk about. Ha! I got the Lover's card. Fancy that. I think it's interesting that I pulled the Lover's card out of here because, it shows compassion and all the things that one should consider when being surrounded by the right people in death. But I instantly go to true crime and people who get murdered by their spouses or their lovers or exes. It's all very dramatic and it's all so petty when you think about it. But it's interesting that I went there. I've been covering difficult deaths in my death doula training class. So aside of how a griever might feel, I really wonder about the people who are about to die in those very brutal moments. Oh, hey.
I think that would be the number one way to die is on that television show, A Thousand Ways to Die. Do you know the number one?
No, I don't. Tell me. I've never even heard of that show. I live under a rock.
There was a show a while ago, not anything recently. I think this is when I was living in California. It was a show called A Thousand Ways to Die, maybe, I don't know, more than 15 years ago. And they started off some of the first programs with like number 582, 320, 67, all these. They never started off with like one, two, three. But anyway, the first way to die is the way that I would like to die. There was a Chinese or Japanese couple, and I guess they were virgins. They were very shy, and they finally got married, and they had sex, and they both came at the same time, and they died. Now, it could be a show, because they didn't give any names or where they got the articles from what I could remember. It was just a show. Who knows? Maybe that's not a way to die, if that's even possible. But anyway, that's one way to die. But enjoy your show. All right. Bye. Good night.
When people tell me that they wish to die when they're coming, I always think about the other person because it's like, oh, okay, great, but what are you doing to that poor survivor who's got to think about those last moments? Did they notice? Didn't they notice? Did they feel guilt? It's just crazy. It's nuts. But two people at the same time checking out in a moment of climax, to me, sounds pretty magical. It sounds, I would consider it fated. Like that is intensity. If I went that way with my partner, that wouldn't be so bad. Would be very interesting for whoever finds us, though. I mean, what a scene.
Okay, so Pastel, I just looked it up because I remember seeing it, and I don't want you to think I'm lying and just saying it just to be whatever. So, November 21, 1987 is when it happened in Tokyo, Japan, and I guess they're calling the act Itchy Boned or
Oh
Itchy
no.
Bond. ICHIBONED. So Itchy Bond or Itchy Boned? I don't know. Itchy Bone sounds pretty. Yeah. Well, there it is.
Ichi, I know in Japanese means one. So if it's an Americanized nasty pun, I am laughing. I do think it's hilarious. I don't know how I would want to die fully, but I have decided that I want to be surrounded by plants. Tons of plants. I want to be in almost like a greenhouse with a little bit more shade for my eyes. If I'm dying, to be honest, I'm gonna need some snoozy time. But I hear ocean waves. I must be able to be near the sand. I instantly think of Spain, but maybe it's the south of France or Brazil, somewhere I haven't been yet. I'm not sure. We'll see. I don't think I would want everyone around me. I want to keep it private, keep it low key. And I think I would have whoever's watching over me leave me alone for periods of time so that if I die, I can die alone. I think it'll just be between me and spirit. Mm, and my cats. I need them to know that when I go, I'm actually gone. If they're gonna survive me, I don't want them to think that I've left them.
It's an interesting question. You know, coming from my paradigm as a Orthodox Christian, I would say any type of death that glorifies God, whether it be, I go to sleep and wake up in the next realm in heaven, whether that be martyrdom, um, however, it doesn't really phase me when, how, or why, because I already have victory over death. So it's not really a big thing for me, you know?
I have follow-up questions. Victory over death, how? Have you experienced a near-death experience or emotionally, mentally, intellectually, spiritually? Are you just one with the knowledge of your beliefs and that makes you be victorious over death? This week I'm back to, feeling similar to you in that I know that I know that this is a moment in a very long existence in the soul's path, in the soul's journey. And in this world, I also see spirits, so I know it. Martyrdom too, though. You want to be a martyr? How so? Like, tell me, what would make it worth it? Or do you mean like in a heroic way, as in saving a life, like first responder style? If something happens and you're there, are you a first responder? I want to know about this victory over death. I do like how that sounds, though, but it just makes me ask so many questions because not that I see life as, the end of life as failing. They describe it in hospitals as either the body fails or people expire, which is brutal in my ears. I hate that. But I do always consider death a winner. I had never considered it making me a loser, though. So victory over death has my mind going in many directions. It's new for me.
When I say victory over death, no, I haven't had a NDE, a near-death experience before. Uh, I've been in situations where I've almost died. If that comes close to that, right, that gave me a different perspective on life. But when I say victory over death, I'm talking about my faith in Christ and his resurrection, right? Um, that right there is the staple of my faith. The fact that Jesus Christ overcame death and that I've had a real encounter with Jesus Christ, that yo, I have victory over death. Like death is subject to him, if that makes sense. So my faith is in him. So my faith is in having victory over that as well. Like from the Orthodox Christianity perspective, I don't look at death as the end. It's just the doorway to eternity. That's really what it is, honestly.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Please do tell me what you consider martyrdom, though.
If you look all throughout like history, we call it the martyr's crown. But that's not the only definition for like martyrdom. Is like being killed for your faith. It could be you just dedicating your life to God and letting go of certain things that may hinder your progress in life, may hinder your relationship with Christ or with other people, and letting those things go and struggling with those things each and every day. Just the thought of I still love these things, but I want to love Jesus more. Like that's also a form of martyrdom. There's another one too, but it doesn't come to mind right now.
I totally feel that. Okay, I've never heard that term for that before. Yeah, focusing the mind, body, and spirit all towards a higher good makes absolute sense to me too. There are things sometimes I put lower in the priority list or I feel coming, but I'm not ready to switch certain habits up. But it does clear the vessel and make connection and communication much more clear. And I love that. That is exactly what makes me less afraid of death or, more goal oriented towards creating what I consider a good death. And even though I'm still formulating the details of this physical plane, I do see the spiritual transition much more clearly.
Your religious practice or your faith, and what made you want to practice that faith? Was it cultural? Was it a decision that you just made? And I'm interested to know, like in your faith, I guess it's a two-part question I'm asking. Um, like what does your faith state that the purpose of life is, and like what happens after death? So yeah, I'm just interested to know. Let me know.
Well, I came to it through calling, to be honest. My family on both sides were relaxed Catholics. We weren't super ceremonial. We didn't go to church, but both of my parents they kind of grew up in the church. Their families were much more religious. And my mother in Venezuela did a lot for the church with her sisters, cleaned it, volunteered, this and that. And she saw some things she didn't want to see or just made her feel like she didn't need to go anywhere. She really felt God lived inside her, so she didn't have to be in any specific place with people other than with her family. And she prayed and had an altar at home. So she did solitary worship. And my father also came from a Catholic background in Spain, but he doesn't go to church. He's a private person in general. So I think it just suited them both to be relaxed in that way. And it didn't seem necessary to them to share the Bible specifically with me or my brother. But at a very young age, I started talking to God. So I remember these moments. I just remember, being at the dinner table, the last one to finish dinner. I couldn't leave the table until I did. And so everybody would go watch TV or do whatever they did after dinner. And I'd be stuck at the table. And I remember there was this chair that nobody ever used. And I would look at it and I would talk to it for hours. And my mother would come in and ask me, "Who are you talking to?" "God." "Oh, okay." And she observed this evolution of dreams I was getting. She was very psychic. She had premonitions all the time. It was in the family. I just came about it very naturally with curiosity in my conversations with God, you know. The conversation was kind of telepathic, if I'm going to describe it in any specific way. And then I was going to different houses, per se, to see if the message resonated. I was getting firsthand teachings, essentially. And I remember looking into Judaism and philosophy and I just, checking out other religions, and nothing was really landing. So I started to do more brujeria. Like I got into spell work, hoodoo, mainly. And I understand it's a closed practice and that's not okay, but I was a curious kid, and I was just looking for the stories that I was hearing. And eventually I found them, and I remember saying like, "Oh shit, I already know this story. This is the story. These are the things I've been hearing. These are the images I've been getting. I know these deities." And so it's a polytheistic practice. I don't follow a specific religion. It turns out the more I did it and the more my mom observed, the more she would tell me, "Oh yeah, I used to do that," or "Your grandmother did that." And it was so clearly it was in my line. I was meant to follow these things. She didn't take me to them. She didn't resist when I asked questions. And then after she saw that I was serious, she started to share with me about all the things that she used to do and the types of healing that my grandmother did. We're all very like curanderismo, if I could use any specific word, which is just healer woman. And there are a lot of indigenous practices. My mother was indigenous, and it was very organic, and the purpose of it is just to find connectedness and love with people and animals, and all things are equal, and there's spirit everywhere. And what I call a radically honest path is the purpose, and in that creating a ripple effect and finding other people and creating a wider and wider web of unity, both in this life and beyond. And I love it.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever encountered somebody with your worldview, or maybe they've never like opened up about it, I guess, right? But I had a question. I thought that intrigued me. How did you know that that was God speaking to you? Like, what were you able to base it off of? Like, not just the subjective experience or the emotional experience. Like, was there anything you can prove that that was God talking to you, or anything that you could lean on and say, okay, yeah, this lines up with this? Because for me, right, like when I encountered Christ, yes, there was the experience itself, which was very real, but then it was like I had historical argumentation to back it up with. Like, as an Orthodox Christian, we have literally 2,000 years worth of writing, 2,000 years worth of histories from like our saints and different people throughout church history that have had encounters. So it's like you can kind of base it off of that. And also you have other things where it's not like well, at least I argue Eastern Orthodox Christianity. It's not a one person religion. You know what I mean? It's not like I can just have an encounter and that's it. Because we're all connected. So everything I do, whatever happens, whatever I say, it's gonna affect the entire. We call the church the body. So it's like it's people there that can confirm or affirm whether or not you're experiencing what you're experiencing or if it's emotional experience. And you have like the Bible and things like too. And we have like the full Bible. We don't have the 66 books as most Christians. So yeah, I'm just interested. Like, what were you able to base it off of to know that was?
Ooh, that's so fascinating. Thanks for your share. Well, there was no doubt in my mind, but it's not so much that it appears, it's more like I tap into it. I feel like Creator is absolutely everywhere at all times, within you, within me, in the air, in the space. It's beyond human comprehension. So I don't have a physical image of it. I just know it's available if you tap in. And I tap in with prayer and I tap in with movement. But also sometimes it's like, hey, I want to talk. So it was an absolute knowing. And it has always guided me towards very good decisions, very mind opening thoughts. It makes me consider my path. Sometimes it questions me and it doesn't feel like self-doubt. It really is like the perspective of another. It provides dialogue, and I can feel in a very subtle way the hugeness of its presence. It's almost like I can breathe it in. I feel it now. I never needed proof. What I wanted was like what you are getting in your body. I like that the congregation is called body, but within that is a witness. And I did have that. My mother witnessed everything. And that's what I thought was very amazing, because she guided me towards something that she practiced and her mother practiced. My grandmother, I think, was very Catholic, but Catholicism that's practiced in Venezuela is very saint based, and the rituals are very similar to some of the indigenous practices that I had. And my mom, although she saw that my choices were different from hers, she never told me yes or no. She just wanted to make sure I wasn't in the presence of predators. She came and she observed. And once, like I said before, she saw that I was really investing myself in it and saw that it was not causing me harm and in fact was steering me in some positive directions. She started to share her experiences with me and how my grandmother cured her from so many near-death experiences and so on.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I think it's dope that, in a sense, that people have like different encounters, especially like here in America, right? Like when it comes to spirituality, a lot of people would say that the spirit realm doesn't exist, but clearly from your worldview, like you're having your spiritual experiences, and from my worldview as a Christian, I'm definitely having my spiritual experiences as well. My next question would be, because I know you said that your parents were Catholic, but they were like more like at home, and I would guess they would be Roman Catholics, if I'm not mistaken. Um, just growing up, like, have you ever thought about like Jesus Christ? Like, what are your thoughts on him? Do you think he's God? Do you think he was a man? Do you think he was crazy? Interested in knowing that.
I am not sure about the Bible. I've never read it. Clearly don't abide by Christian rules. There's nothing wrong in preaching love, and the way he's described, again, I don't know how he's described in the Bible, but the way people describe Jesus sounds like a beautiful person. So I see him as a man. I see him as a pivotal, iconic, and profoundly spiritual man.
So bruja, I know that means like witch in Spanish. I know
Hmm.
that out here where I'm based, I'm in New York. Like some of my friends that are consider themselves that they're part of Santeria, if I'm not mistaken, if that's what it's called. Is that the name of your religion, or is it something else?
I'm not a santera. I have had orishas visit me. I don't follow religion, as in, I don't follow a set of rules. I really do a lot of goddess worship, though. And so when I worship goddesses, I don't mean to sound like I just jump from one to the other, but I have always been receiving visitations. And my journey has always demanded that I tell stories. I'm supposed to keep names alive. I know that part of my spiritual duty is to share the love and the connectivity through storytelling. And so the deities that come to me, tell me their story, and through art, usually through art, I share those stories. I retell those stories. I bring their names back into the mouths of people that may have not spoken them or may have never heard of them, never said them, specifically to share their message. Either their message is really needed, and so they show up to say, hey, teach this lesson for me. You need to speak for me right now. Or it is that they have a specific purpose with the people around me. Anyhow, I say that to say sometimes orishas come to me and I have to find out who they are. They don't say, hey, my name is, and this is what I do. They'll start showing up in my dreams. They show up in my life. And if I'm lucky, their name will pop up over and over and over again. With Oshun, it was clear. I mean, people would come up to me, strangers, and say, you're Oshun's daughter, or bring her up and tell me stories about her. And, her presence became very, very clear. So that was very easy for me to grasp on. And then I have to find out what they're about, and what they did, and their experiences, and geek out on them to be able to tell the stories, because again, they're not telling me do A, B, and C. And sometimes the deities will show up with no names. Sometimes I do get male figures, but for the most part, female presenting deities show up. But I don't practice Santeria per se.
So if you don't mind, I'm not gonna pray now. Obviously, that's weird. But I'm gonna definitely like pray you actually have an encounter with him, because I'm telling you, like, encountering him, it really changes everything about you. Like it's just a overwhelming feeling, a overwhelming joy, it's peace, like just all hitting you at the same time. Like that this he's more than just a man. Like like no, this is the Most High God. Like this is God. Like it radically changes you. So that's dope. I'm definitely gonna uh, make sure I do that.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus is always welcome. I do feel that expansiveness with the presences that show up. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. You know what I'm talking about. That intense love, that it's like I have grown the biggest lungs on earth and I am breathing through timelines.
Just based off of what you're telling me, it's interesting because like in Eastern Orthodoxy, we have similar practices, but it's a little bit different. Like when it comes to our saints and things like that. Because I know like in the Latin countries, I know like Roman Catholicism and uh, like spiritualism, for lack of better words. I know it got kind of like blended together in a sense because I know just based off of history, um, when like slave owners were trying to strip the religion from the slaves, um, and push their form of Christianity on them, a lot of slaves took different saints, but it would
Yeah.
really be their gods that they worship, so they wouldn't be persecuted by the slave owners. But it's different in Eastern Orthodoxy. Next message.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly how Santeria came. The Yoruba people were brought over in the transatlantic slave trade, and plantation owners and slave owners weren't having it, and a new wave was created.
Different in Eastern Orthodoxy, because like I said earlier, we can literally trace back. I think it's only like really three streams of Christianity that can trace back their lineage to the time of the apostles and the time of Christ. Every other, I mean, we're not a denomination because we existed before denominations, but every denomination that came after, we would consider like heterodox, which means different teaching, or like a cult. And but based off of that, like we have like historical records, like nobody debates it on our practices to asking the saints to pray to God for us. We pray for those that passed. If they passed without Christ, we ask God to have mercy on them and to transform their heart beyond the grave. Yeah, Orthodox Christianity is real ancient.
It's a trip how old some of these things are, isn't it? Same stories, the same messages, and yet we continue with the same fears, the same trials and tribulations. It makes me consider what evolution is. And by evolution, I mean the human condition, the way we human as a verb.
Thanks for a fantastic show, Pastel. I sent you the link to that Thousand Ways number one thing. All right. Hope
Thank you.
you enjoy it. Have a good night. I'm out of here. And shout out to all your listeners. Good night. Bye. I'm gonna sleep. Die in my sleep.
And there it is. I think it's beautiful that when I pulled the lover's card, I instantly went to my anxieties and fears, and through a conversation with strangers, landed back in love's lap. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want to join in the live recordings, have a conversation with me, find me on the Stereo platform where I schedule an open forum on Sundays. You can find me online. My website is pastelsupernova.com and on any platform as at Pastel Supernova. And to tune in exclusively to my death doula related work, find me on Instagram at Death Doula Pastel. Please send me your stories and topics for discussion to info@pastelsupernova.com. Rate the show 5 twinkling stars and tell a friend that might love this. Until next time, blessings and respect.